Pakistan violated ceasefire agreement. Indian Army takes retaliatory measures. Says Deputy Foreign Minister Vikram Misri. Pakistan has violated the ceasefire agreement, and the Indian Army is taking retaliatory measures, said India's Deputy Foreign Minister Vikram Misri during a brief statement. In the past 2 hours, there have been repeated violations of the agreement reached last night between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. The armed forces are providing an adequate response, and we take these violations very seriously. We urge Pakistan to take appropriate steps to cease these violations and treat the situation with the seriousness and responsibility it demands, he said. The Indian armed forces have received clear instructions to respond firmly to any repeated breaches of the ceasefire agreement along the international border, the diplomat added. Earlier today, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that New Delhi and Islamabad had agreed to a ceasefire following talks with Washington. The two sides agreed to halt all shelling and military actions on land, in the air, and at sea starting at 5 p.m. on Sunday. However, shortly afterward, AFP, citing a government source in India, reported that Islamabad had violated the ceasefire agreement. In turn, China's Xinhua news agency, citing sources in Pakistan's security agencies, claimed that Indian forces had launched unprovoked shelling along the line of control. Tensions between the two countries escalated following a terrorist attack near the town of Pahalgam in India's Jammu and Kashmir region on April 22nd, which resulted in the deaths of 25 Indian citizens and 1 Nepalese national. New Delhi stated that it has evidence of involvement by Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI, in the attack. On the night of May 10th, India's Ministry of Defense announced that, in response to the Pahalgam terrorist attack, it had conducted Operation Sindoor, targeting terrorist infrastructure within Pakistani territory. The ministry clarified that no Pakistani military facilities were attacked during the operation. The Pakistani authorities, on the other hand, claimed that India had attacked 5 civilian settlements, resulting in at least 31 deaths and 57 injuries. According to Geo News, Islamabad launched a large-scale military operation against New Delhi on Saturday. Soon after, the Indian Armed Forces reported repelling an attack that involved UAVs, long-range weapons, loitering munitions, and fighter jets, while also striking terrorist training sites inside Pakistan. The rising tensions between India and Pakistan remain one of the most acute geopolitical issues in South Asia. Following recent skirmishes and statements from top officials on both sides, the situation along the India-Pakistan border remains critical, with each side continuing to accuse the other of violating the ceasefire. The international community is closely monitoring developments. Despite the declared ceasefire, many countries have expressed concern and are calling for an immediate resumption of peace talks. The United States, in particular, supports the negotiation process and continues to work actively with both sides through diplomatic channels. President Donald Trump's administration has stated that it will continue to play the role of mediator and will insist that both parties adhere to peace agreements. However, despite global diplomatic efforts, Indian and Pakistani officials continue to trade accusations. In her statement, Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj emphasized that India will not tolerate violations of the agreement and will continue to act firmly if such incidents are repeated. At the same time, the Pakistani side maintains that India is the aggressor in this conflict and accuses it of unjustified strikes on civilian areas. In response to the incidents that occurred in April and early May, both India and Pakistan have mobilized their military forces along the line of control. Advanced weaponry is reportedly being used on both sides. India has reported that its troops successfully repelled several attacks involving unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and long-range weapon systems. Intense fighting has been taking place in areas adjacent to the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir, where terrorist activity remains one of the primary threats to regional stability. Pakistan, for its part, claims that the Indian military has used air power and artillery to attack civilian settlements on the Pakistani side of the border. Islamabad authorities have released figures on civilian casualties, stating that India's actions constitute a violation of international humanitarian law. Following the escalation, Pakistan announced the launch of a large-scale military operation against India. The operation includes not only traditional military assets, but also advanced technologies such as loitering munitions and precision-guided missiles. In response, India has intensified its own operations, striking key terrorist infrastructure targets on Pakistani territory. The ongoing conflict between India and Pakistan is significantly impacting regional security and global geopolitics. The worsening relations between these two nuclear-armed nations are causing deep concern among international observers who warn of the potential for further escalation and increased military expenditures on both sides. In light of this, experts emphasize the importance of de-escalation and the resumption of diplomatic dialogue. The influence of external powers, such as China and the United States, also plays a key role in conflict resolution. China, a traditional ally of Pakistan, has voiced its support for Islamabad, while the United States continues to call for a peaceful resolution and maintains active diplomatic engagement with both parties. The escalation of military actions in South Asia is also having serious economic repercussions across the region. Trade and investment in countries like India and Pakistan are already being affected by persistent security threats and restrictions imposed by both governments. Businesses in both nations are facing increased risks and uncertainty, impacting currency values and financial market stability. Moreover, the heightened tensions are affecting the security of maritime routes and transportation corridors, with significant implications for global trade, particularly in the energy sector. The potential closure of key trade routes and attempts to block supply chains could severely disrupt the global economy, leading to fluctuations in oil prices and other critical resources. A peaceful resolution to the India-Pakistan conflict remains a top priority for the international community. Multiple mediation efforts, including those by the United Nations and various diplomatic missions, have so far yielded limited results. Nevertheless, experts believe that only through diplomacy and compromise can a full-scale war, one with devastating consequences for both countries and the broader region, be avoided. As the situation continues to unfold, analysts stress the need not only to address immediate security concerns, but also to work toward long-term stabilization of India-Pakistan relations. This will require sustained efforts from both sides and international support. Ongoing military activity in the region continues to raise global concerns. Meanwhile, both India and Pakistan are working to strengthen their positions, with the possibility of further clashes in the future if the situation is not brought under control. South Asia remains on edge, and any further developments could dramatically shift the balance of power in the region. With powerful armed forces and nuclear capabilities, both India and Pakistan face serious consequences if they fail to find a path toward de-escalation. Peaceful resolution remains the most desirable outcome for all parties involved, but achieving it will require a willingness to compromise and engage in constructive negotiations.